So, a couple years back, my buddies and I tried to stay in the park after closing. Our plan was just to take pictures, nothing sinister or anything like that. We just wanted to be able to say we did it, you know? Basically, we snuck from bathroom to bathroom, corner to corner, and managed to stay there until they closed the gates and the maintenance team got to work. We were really surprised we hadn't got caught. It was almost strange considering how much talking up Disney security gets. Our hearts were beating like crazy, and we sat there for a while hiding behind the tombstones behind the Haunted Mansion, and we noticed that it was true. The Disney staff had signed their name to every single one. So finally, we got the courage to roam about. Still being careful is not to be seen. It was eerily quiet. The occasional guard or maintenance worker would walk by and we would just duck or hide behind a corner. It worked for about half an hour. Of course, we couldn't keep it up for long, and yeah, they caught us. I mean, gave us props for even attempting and succeeding, but that's not where the story ends. So the first thing we said when they caught us was, "Are you going to take us down to the dungeon?" And we laughed. The security guard chuckled too, so the mood wasn't too dreary. He told us that we weren't the first people to try to sneak in after hours, but he wanted to know how we did it. We explained the situation and he actually laughed and said it wasn't a bad plan. He told us he had to take us to the Disney jail to be further interrogated, which we thought was odd, but we figured from the beginning that if we had gotten caught, they'd take us down there. It might have been our plan all along. Maybe we wanted to see the Disney catacombs more than we wanted to see the park after hours. So he called for more workers to come help escort us, and we went towards Toontown. Then they took us down in the elevator right into hell. The first thing that we noticed is how expensive looking the elevator was. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's hard to explain. It was like a stainless steel interior with mirrors all around, and the floor was this tacky red carpeting, but it looked expensive. There were only 2 buttons in this elevator, not counting the emergency buttons. One said up and the other said down. I had forgotten to mention they never handcuffed us or zip-tied our hands. They just kind of walked beside us, expecting we'd follow, not that we would have tried to make a run for it. I mean, these people seemed decent. Like, how were we supposed to know what was going to happen? The elevator stopped and we started walking down this perfectly shining, bleach-smelling corridor. There were no doors on either side in this plain, empty corridor. We walked for what seemed like an eternity, and no one was talking any longer. It was me, my friends, the security guard, and 2 other maintenance workers. Finally, we reached a heavy metal door that had a security code and a card reader. One worker put his card in, the other typed a code on the keypad. I watched the code he typed in, 121566. I only remember it because I found out later what its significance was, and it made me laugh looking back. Strange. It's strange that I could laugh looking back. They led me and my friends into another corridor. This one had doors down the hallway walls. Each door had little plexiglass squares, 10 by 10 inch windows on the top right corner, and it looked sort of like a psych ward, to be honest, not so much like a jail. He led us to room 1901 and looked inside. In a single desk with surprisingly 3 chairs for me and each of my friends. Then they left us there, alone, closing the door on the way out. We sat there in the chairs like obedient little children and waited for them to return. But they never did. 2 hours went by and no one came back for us. My buddy Tim went to the door and surprisingly, it was unlocked. He didn't open it though. He was worried there'd be a guard on the outside and they'd think we were escaping, and we weren't looking for any more trouble. So about 25 minutes went by and we got really restless and finally decided to leave the room. The hallway was empty like before. No sign of people, nothing. We started calling out, "Hello? Is anybody there?" No one answered our calls. We noticed surveillance cameras were placed above every door, and we got to wondering if there were any living souls in this place at all. We should have left right then and there. But then again, whoever does the right thing in these kind of situations? Every door looked the same, and each one had a specific number above it. They weren't in any order like, say, rooms 1 through 10. They were all scattered numbers. For example, our room had been 1901, but the door next to it was 1205. We got to thinking and finally assumed they were just randomly chosen. We walked up the hallway and had no idea where we were going, what we were hoping to find, or even if it mattered. My other buddy, Guy, decided we should just leave. He said that if they had really wanted us here, they'd have come back. And maybe it was just a scare tactic. Maybe they wanted to trick us into thinking that we were being arrested and were waiting for us outside to laugh. I felt weary of this whole situation, and Tim was just quiet the whole time, nodding his head here and there. He was more interested in looking into the door's little 10 by 10 inch windows. That wasn't a good idea. I tried to tell him, of course, but no one listens to reason when they're freaked out, and we were definitely freaked the fuck out at this point. The cameras above the door were capable of motion detection and followed us as we wandered down the desolate corridor. The little red light at the bottom of the lens blinking each second. No noise filled the air. All we heard was each other breathing. Then it happened. As we reached the end of the hallway, unfortunately, the door at the end had another PIN code reader. I tried the PIN from before, the one I saw them type in, but it was invalid. At that moment, the lights in the hallway shut off and we heard the door. God damn it, I can still hear them to this day. The fucking doors opened. All lining up along the hallway, they made subtle creaks, then boom, as they hit the wall beside them with force. As I said, I entered the invalid code in the keypad, and the lights shut off, and the doors opened, except for the door with the keypad. We also noticed, as the doors opened, each doorway had a little bit of light seeping from its open pathway. We stood there, stunned, for a good 5 minutes, not knowing what to do. We figure we tripped some alarm and that this was just some protocol, a standard drill in case of some attempted escape. What were we supposed to think? We turned in another direction, away from the locked door. A sense of panic hit all three of us. For some reason, we got the urge to run. No one agreed to running. It was like we all knew what we had to do at the same time, some sort of instinct, like a baby gazelle knowing when to run from a lion. We were all in a lion's den, all right? It wasn't until about the 10th door we passed that we began to look in the doorway as we passed them. Standing in the doorway were people in costume. We were running past Donalds, Mickeys, Goofies, Plutos, and all different kinds of Disney characters. It was insane, and we screamed at the top of our lungs. I don't know. They say never look behind you as you run, but I did. They left the rooms following us, not running, just casually walking towards us. I think that is what What made it so much more terrifying, almost like they knew we had nowhere to go. Now, I don't know if it was just in my head, just from sheer panic and fear of the moment, but I swear on my mother's life, I can hear It's a Small World playing over the intercom. I have a fear of dolls, and the ride always gave me the creeps my whole life. Now I could see them, little robotic dolls standing in the doorways as we passed. Still following were the costumed characters. The dolls weren't chasing us, thank God. I would have died from a heart attack if I had seen the dolls following us, but they didn't. I didn't make the situation all that better. I mean, how many times have you been followed by a group of costumed individuals seemingly out to fucking eat you alive? At least that's what I told myself to keep myself moving. Stopped meaning being devoured by fucking Donald Duck. I don't know about you, but I don't want to go out like that. Tim was crying, Guy was sweating and breathing heavily, and I just kept turning my head to see if we were being followed, and of course we were. I don't know how many doors we passed at this point, or if there were different characters at each door, but I knew that this hallway had to end at some point, and we were getting the fuck out of this place pronto. Easier said than done. I looked back after another minute or two of running, and I noticed there was nothing behind us anymore, and that we could see. I could hear footsteps, but I figured we had gotten so far ahead and they were just walking casually like before. The hallway was still going on for what seemed like forever, and Guy needed to stop or he was going to faint from exhaustion. The door beside us was open and the light was on, but nothing inside. I decided we would hide there till we caught our breath again and could continue onwards. As we closed the door behind us, I could see it was room 1966. Again, this meant nothing at the time. Tim was pacing the room. Guy was lying on the floor, still breathing pretty hard. And I was at the window, looking out. I saw nothing. No more music. No nothing. It was dark out, and it was hard to tell for sure, but I figured I would have seen figures, shadows, or something. Still, I kept watch. After 15 minutes or so, Guy said he was good to go. Tim was the only one smart enough to pull out his new Razor cell phone. No signal, of course. He opened the door subtly, quietly, but heard no footsteps. Nothing was following us anymore, but we weren't taking any chances. We got back to running. It only took us another 7 minutes to reach the door, give or take. It had no keypad and it was open. We entered the corridor from before, and thank God there were no doors. We ran for the elevators and got in, pushed up, and stood there, looking at each other, dumbfounded as to what had happened. None of us spoke. We just waited till the elevator opened back into Toontown and started making our way to the front gate. We kept a low profile using the same duck and hide technique that had gotten us this far from the get-go. The maintenance workers and security guards were still about, but we couldn't take any more chances. Finally, Tim lost it and took off in a sprint. I couldn't imagine what set him off until I looked and saw that everyone in the park just stood there, staring at us with blank faces. We heard a voice over the intercom explaining that 3 fugitives had escaped from captivity and needed to be escorted back to the jails below. We booked it. Catching up to Tim, costume characters appeared from the shadows, workers and guards chasing after us. Everyone was sprinting for us. I couldn't see well, but I imagined the drool dripping from their jowls. They wanted us back down there. We had escaped, and they were pissed. The gate was just up ahead. The creepiest thing about it all was that besides the voice over the intercom, the park was dead silent. No chat from the workers could be heard. Even now, as they were running for us, we assumed it was for our lives. From the characters, the workers, the guards, no one bothered to shout after us. No one yelled. No one said stop. Nothing. Just footsteps and the occasional cough from Guy. As we made it past the park's front gates, we didn't stop until we got to the parking lot. Our car was gone, and we were left scratching our heads. We continued running down the road. We went on for miles, stopping occasionally for us to catch our breath. We made it to a little corner store where Tim used his cell phone to call a taxi cab. When it finally arrived, we took the cab back to the hotel we were staying at, paid the fare, and went up to our rooms. In the end, the next day, we got a call from the hotel's front desk, so we headed downstairs. There were officers waiting for us. They said our car had been impounded and we needed to pay a fine. They didn't ask us any other questions, and we didn't bother telling the police what had happened. Even now, on this random board of people who don't have any reason to disbelieve me, don't believe me, so how could an officer of the law be expected to? We didn't bother. We simply paid the fine and drove home. We didn't think about what happened the whole drive back. It wasn't until a couple weeks later that I got myself up to search the numbers. Curiosity, I guess. As you know, Walt Disney was born December 5th, 1901. The room we were in was 1901. The door next to it was 1205. He also died December 15th, 1966, which was the key code the worker had used to lead us into the main corridor. What a strange coincidence, I decided. Whether any of this was real at all, I couldn't tell you. Maybe our imaginations ran wild. Maybe we were tired. It was around 1 a.m. when we made our escape, so it's plausible that's the answer. I'll never forget it, though. And I haven't been back since.